The wind howled through the shattered trees as smoke climbed into the sky like fingers reaching for help. The once peaceful planet of Nithra was now a battlefield. Green moons hung low in the sky, casting a ghostly light over the ruins. Ash floated through the air like dying snowflakes. Sergeant Jalen Reed gripped his rifle tightly, his knuckles white beneath his gloves. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. The enemy wasn't just invading, they were wiping out entire species. And one species had almost vanished overnight. The Solari were an ancient, peaceful race, tall, luminous-skinned beings with nature-rooted powers. They never wanted war. But war found them anyway. By the time humanity arrived to defend the outer systems, only a few Solari were left breathing. Jalen had not expected to care. Orders were orders: get in, protect civilians, get out. But everything changed the moment he met her. She stood amidst a burning grove, her green skin glowing like fire-kissed emerald, her golden eyes locked onto his without fear. She didn't run, she didn't beg. She simply looked at him and said in near-perfect English, "You are not like the others." That was the first time Jalen had ever hesitated during a mission. The battlefield faded. The gunfire, the shouting, it all vanished as he stared at her. There was something powerful in her calm. Something that made him lower his weapon. The extraction point was 2 clicks away. His cum crackled with urgency. But Jalen stayed. The girl was injured. Her leg bled a glowing sap-like fluid. Still, she stood tall, defiant, guarding the bodies of her fallen kin. She had no name she could speak in his language. So he called her Liari, from an old Earth word, meaning last light. She accepted the name with a nod, but her eyes never stopped watching the horizon. Jalen carried her through the battlefield, dodging drones and fire. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply gripped his armor with a quiet strength that didn't match her delicate frame. In the medbay, they tried to take her away for study. Jalen refused. He stood between the doctors and Liari like a wall of steel. "She's not a specimen," he growled. "She's a survivor." The higher-ups weren't happy. She was the last of her kind. A political symbol. A source of power. But Jalen didn't care. Liari wasn't a weapon. She was a person. And he had made a silent vow. Then the rumors began. That the enemy called the Dravari were hunting for something. Something ancient. Something alive. Jalen didn't need a report to guess what they were searching for. Liari knew. He saw it in her eyes. She didn't speak of it. But her glances toward the stars, her silence when asked about her home, it all spoke louder than words. They moved her to a secure facility. Not for her safety, but so they could control her. Jalen was reassigned, ordered to stand down. But he couldn't. He knew she wouldn't be safe without him. So he broke orders, stole a ship, crashed through orbital lockdown. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He just couldn't let her be locked in a cage again. When he arrived, the facility was already under attack. The Dravari had found her. Everything was burning. And in the middle of it all, Liari stood with her hands raised, vines growing from the ground, wrapping around enemy warbits. Jalen fought his way through. Reached her, she turned to him, her face streaked with ash. "You came," she said, not surprised but relieved. He took her hand. "I gave you my word," he replied. "And I don't break my word." They escaped through the crumbling tunnels. Beneath the facility, the air was thick with smoke and the walls groaned above them. But Liari guided him, her glowing fingers tracing symbols on the walls to reveal hidden paths. When they reached the surface, dawn had broken. Light poured through the shattered trees. And in that moment, Jalen saw not just a survivor, but a beacon. She was the last Solari, the last living memory of her people. But with Jalen by her side, she wasn't alone, and for the first time in his life, Jalen Reed realized that some vows were worth dying for. The bunker door slammed shut behind them as dust rained down from above. Yalin coughed, waving it away, his eyes locked on Liari. Her breath was heavy, but her posture was calm, like she had done this 1,000 times before. They had escaped the facility, but not the war. The Dravari would come again. They always came, with more ships, more machines, and no mercy. Yalin checked his weapon. Low charge. Not enough for another fight. Liari sat by a cracked stone wall, her fingers pressed against the earth. Vines bloomed from the ground, curling around her feet. The plants responded to her like children to a mother's voice. She was nature-given. Form, and now she was hiding in the dirt. Yalin knelt beside her. "What do they want from you?" he asked. She looked up, eyes glowing faintly as if the truth inside her burned too bright to hide. "I carry something," she said softly. "Something the Dravari fear." He waited for more, but she closed her eyes. Her lips pressed together, as if even speaking it aloud would awaken death. That silence said more than any explanation. Whatever she carried, it could change everything. Yalin paced the room. He had no orders, no backup, and nowhere safe to run. But he had a promise, and he had her. That had to be enough. Outside, the wind howled again. Scouting drones passed overhead, their red eyes flashing through the cracks in the ceiling. They were being hunted. Yalin switched off all signals, dampened the bunker's heat signature, and prayed it would be enough. That night, Liari whispered in her sleep. Words from an ancient tongue, older than human spaceflight. Yalin sat with his rifle ready, listening to every word, not understanding a single one. When dawn came, she awoke with tears in her eyes. "The stars are crying," she said. "Another Solari beacon has gone dark. Another world, erased." Yalin clenched his fists. He couldn't stop it, but maybe he could stop the next one. "Where do we go?" he asked. Liari stood slowly, pointing toward the eastern peaks. "There is a vault. My ancestors sealed it. Inside is what they seek. They left the bunker at first light. Moving through the misty forest, they avoided patrols and sensors." Liari moved like a shadow, the plants parting for her steps. Yalin followed, trusting her silence more than any map. By midday, they reached a ravine filled with glowing roots. A natural bridge arched across it, but it looked fragile. Yalin hesitated. Liari stepped forward without fear. The roots solidified under her bare feet. He crossed carefully behind her, sweat rolling down his back. Halfway across, a metallic shriek rang out. A Dravari scout burst from the canopy, its wings slicing the air with precision. Yalin fired once, hitting its sensor. The drone spiraled into the ravine, crashing into the roots below. But the sound would draw others. They had to move fast. At the top of the ridge, they saw a tower of stone carved into the mountain, hidden by mist and vines. The entrance glowed faintly with Solari symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. Liari stepped closer and placed her hand on the stone. It reacted instantly, opening with a groan that echoed through the forest. Inside, a green light flickered to life. Yalin followed, his steps slow, alert for traps. The vault wasn't just a shelter, it was a temple. Walls lined with crystal veins hummed as they passed. Symbols moved like water across the floor. Yalin felt dizzy, like time itself bent around. The place Liari stopped at a pedestal in the center. A glowing orb floated above it, surrounded by dancing strands of light. "This is the seed of memory," she said. "It holds the soul of my people." Yalin stepped closer. "They wanted to destroy it?" he asked. Liari shook her head. "No, they want to use it. To control life. To erase all that resists." He stared at the orb. It pulsed softly, like a heart waiting for a purpose. "Then we make sure they never get it," he said. Liari reached out, and the orb dropped gently into her hands. Her body glowed brighter, veins of green light tracing up. her neck and arms. She looked stronger, older, like all her ancestors whispered through her now. "We must go to the Axis Gate," she said. "It is the only place it can be sealed forever," Yalan nodded. He didn't know where the Axis Gate was, but he would follow her anywhere, because protecting her wasn't just about duty anymore. It was about belief, about standing between the end of everything and one last chance to stop it, and because somewhere deep inside, he had already decided he would die before letting her fall. They moved at night, guided by Liari's memory and the pulse of the seed she carried. The forest around them grew thicker, alive with soft glows and whispering winds. Every step took them deeper into the old world. Yalan stayed alert, rifle always ready, eyes scanning for signs of movement. The Dravari were relentless. Even silence felt dangerous. Every rustle, every shift in the shadows could mean death. Liari walked ahead, her feet silent on the mossy ground. She was changing. Yalan could see it. Her glow had become steady, her movements more confident. She no longer looked like a survivor. She looked like a leader. They stopped by a broken Solari watchtower buried in vines. Yalan set up camp while Liari placed her hands on the ancient stone, whispering in her language. The wall responded, glowing softly under her touch. "This place remembers," she said, sitting beside him. "It holds stories carved into the roots. My people never built alone. They built with the forest." Yalan handed her a protein ration. "I wish I could understand what it's like," he said. She smiled faintly. "You understand more than most. You listen. You protect." That is the old way too. That night they heard the distant roar of engines. The Dravari were close. Liari placed a vine shield around their camp. It grew in minutes, blending them into the trees. Yalan didn't sleep. He sat with his rifle across his lap, watching the darkness. At dawn, the vine shield withered and sank back into the earth. Liari touched the ground gently, then stood. "They're moving toward the gate," she said. "We need to reach it first." They followed a hidden path through stone cliffs, climbing higher into the mountains. The air thinned, snow began to fall. But the glow from Liari's skin melted every flake before it touched her. At a ridge, they found a crashed human scout ship half buried in ice. Yalan activated its long-range scanner. The signal was weak, but he found what he was looking for, a transmission point near the Axis Gate. If they reached it, they could call for help. But help came too soon, and from the wrong side. A Dravari skimmer descended fast from the clouds, its searchlights cutting across the cliffs. Yalan pulled Liari into a frozen alcove and held her close, his heart pounding like a war drum. The light passed over them without stopping. The skimmer moved on, but Liari didn't relax. "They know we're near," she whispered. "The seed draws them like flame draws night beasts." They kept moving, higher and faster. Jalen's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. The path narrowed, then opened into a massive stone arch buried beneath ice. Symbols flickered across the arch like lightning trapped in glass. "This is it," Liari said. "The Gate of Axis." Yalan stepped through the arch. Beyond it lay a valley filled with floating stones and pillars of crystal. The wind howled with ancient voices. The seed in Liari's hands pulsed faster, brighter, more alive. Suddenly, the sky lit up with red flashes. Dravari dropships descended on the far edge of the valley. Black figures with glowing weapons marched toward them in formation. Yalan raised his rifle. "We don't run now," he said. "We finish this." Liari walked to the center of the valley and placed the seed on a tall stone pedestal. The crystals around them began to rise, spinning in a circle. The wind became a song, filled with sorrow and strength. The Dravari charged. Yalan took cover behind a pillar and opened fire. Each shot was precise. He didn't miss. But they kept coming. For every one that fell, two more replaced them. Liari stood still, eyes closed, arms raised. Energy burst from the seed, forming a dome of green light. The Dravari's weapon sizzled and vanished before reaching her. But the shield was draining her. Yalin could see it in her trembling hands. He ran to her side. "We need more time," he said. Liari nodded. "Buy me 5 breaths. That's all I need." Yalin turned, facing the oncoming wave. He had no backup. No more grenades. His power cell blinked red. But he stood his ground anyway, because 5 breaths was enough to change everything. Yalin fired until the rifle sparked in his hands. His power cell was dead. He threw the weapon aside and pulled out his sidearm, still firing as the Dravari drew closer. Their armor was dark and slick, like oil with a pulse. Their eyes glowed red, locked on Liari and the seed. They didn't care about him. To them, he was just an obstacle. But he was an obstacle that refused to fall. He dropped 3 more before one of them slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. Yalin rolled and struck back with his elbow, then drove his blade into the Dravari's neck joint. The soldier fell limp, and Yalin pulled his blade free. Another wave rushed forward. Yalin stood with blood on his face, breathing hard, legs unsteady. Behind him, Liari's voice rose into the air. She was chanting in the Solari tongue, her hands lifted high, light spilling from her chest like a sunrise. The seed's energy spread across the valley. Floating stones aligned, forming a pattern in the air. A beam of pure green light burst from the pedestal into the sky, opening a swirling vortex above. The Dravari stopped, unsure. They had never seen this. They didn't understand it. But fear didn't stop them for long. They raised their weapons and moved again. Yalin turned to Liari. She was shaking. Her knees buckled. The seed was draining her life. He stepped behind her, placed his hands over hers, and shared his strength. His own skin began to glow faintly. The seed responded. The energy flow stabilized. Liari gasped and looked up at him. "You're part of it now," she said. "The seed has accepted you." The vortex above them grew wider, pulling wind and debris upward. Crystals all around began to hum in unison, singing the song of a forgotten race. It was beautiful and terrifying at once, but the Dravari were not done. A warship emerged from the clouds, massive and silent, its hull covered in glowing symbols. It hovered above the valley, lowering a black pod toward the center. Liari's eyes widened. "That's not a transport, that's a breaker." "There. Going to destroy the valley." Yalin looked up. The pod was nearly at the pedestal. If it landed, it would tear the seed apart. He didn't ask for orders. He didn't ask for plans. He ran, dodging crystal shards and beams of light. He climbed the pedestal. His muscles burned, his chest ached. But he kept going. At the top, he leapt onto the lowering pod, climbed it like a beast, and reached its control hatch, with no time to hack. He ripped off the panel and plunged his blade into the circuits. Sparks flew. The pod jolted, hissed, then exploded in midair. The blast threw Yalin across the valley, crashing into the snow. He didn't move. Liari screamed, her voice raw and sharp. She ran to him, falling to her knees beside his broken body. His eyes fluttered open, blood at the corner of his mouth. "Did it work?" he asked. She nodded, tears falling. "You stopped it. You saved the seed." Yalin smiled weakly. "Then it was worth it." The seed pulsed one final time. The vortex above narrowed into a thread of light and vanished. The valley went silent. The Dravari began to retreat, their leaders slain, their weapon destroyed. Liari looked down at Yalin, placing her glowing hand over his heart. "You're not allowed to leave me," she said. "Not after everything." He laughed once, short and tired. "Then keep me here. Bind me with your magic." Her glow deepened, surrounding them both. Vines wrapped gently around his chest, his wounds sealed by energy and warmth. His breath steadied, his pain faded. She was healing him, and as she healed, something ancient passed between them. A connection not just of survival, but of bond. The seed had accepted him. And now so had she. Yalen awoke to the soft glow of the Solari Valley pulsing around him. His chest no longer ached. His wounds were closed. He sat up slowly and found Liari sitting nearby, her back to him, watching the morning mist roll over the mountains. The seed rested again on the pedestal, quiet but alive. Its hum was slower now, calm. The storm had passed, but the damage still hung heavy in the air. Craters scorched the earth. Dravari bodies lay scattered. The silence was too still. Liari turned as he rose. Her expression was soft, but her eyes looked older than before. "You gave yourself to the seed," she said. "It left a mark on your soul." Yalen nodded. He didn't feel like the same man anymore. Something in him had changed. Not just the energy from the seed, but the weight of what they had done. "What happens now?" he asked. Liari stood and faced the eastern sky. "The seed must be sealed again. We protected it, but we didn't finish the cycle. The Axis Gate is only the beginning." Together, they left the valley behind. The climb down the mountain was quiet, every step echoing with memories. The world below looked different now. Less like a battlefield, more like a place still holding hope. At the base of the mountain, they found an old Solari vessel buried in a grove. Vines had grown through its frame, but Liari walked to it and touched the hull. The ship hummed, and the vines slowly pulled away. Yalen stepped inside and ran, his fingers across the smooth walls. The ship responded, lighting up in soft green pulses. It was still alive, still connected to her kind. It was waiting for her return. They launched into the sky, heading toward the last known Solari sanctuary deep in uncharted space. As they traveled, Liari showed Yalen how the seed's connection allowed him to feel the pulse of planets, the sorrow of forests, the silence of dying stars. Each night, they shared stories. Yalen spoke of Earth, of cities full of light and steel, of oceans that roared without stopping. Liari spoke of her people, of temples made from living trees, of songs sung through roots and wind. They were two worlds forced together by war, yet more alike than they had believed. The seed had chosen them both for a reason. On the fifth day, the sanctuary appeared. A hidden planet covered in silver clouds and golden forests. Orbiting it were ruined Solari ships, silent guardians of a forgotten time. Liari guided the vessel through a narrow gap in the clouds and landed near a shining lake. The sanctuary was untouched. Crystalline towers rose from the earth, reflecting the sky. The silence here was peaceful, not empty. But as they stepped forward, they found something waiting. A Solari guardian, older than Liari, stood beside the lake. His body was half energy, half root. He bowed to her, then turned his glowing eyes to Yalen. "He carries the mark," the guardian said. "He is bound to the seed. He is no longer only human." Liari stepped beside Yalen. "He is with me. We stand together," the guardian nodded. "Then the final test remains. The seed must be sealed, but the one bound to it must give something in return." Jalen's jaw tightened. "What kind of something?" he asked. The guardian raised a hand and the air shimmered. A vision formed before them, Yalen alone, standing in a barren place, the seed pulsing in his chest, and the world around him changed forever. Liari reached for his hand. "The seed needs a protector, even after sealing. Someone it can trust. Someone it has chosen. It chose you." Yalen looked at the vision again. His heart was calm. He wasn't afraid. Not because he was ready, but because he understood the cost. He turned to Liari. "If I do this, will I still be me?" She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "You'll be more than you were, but not less." Yalen looked to the sky. The war had taken so much, but here now, he had a choice. A choice that could shape the future or end it. And with her hand in his, he made his decision. Yalen stood at the edge of the glowing lake, the seed held gently in his hands. Its soft pulse matched his heartbeat. Every breath he took echoed with memories not his own. The lives of the Solari whispered through him like distant thunder. Liari stood behind him, silent, watching. She had brought him here, but this choice was his alone. The sanctuary hummed with ancient energy, waiting for the final step to be taken. The guardian raised his hand and the ground before them shifted. A circle of roots emerged, forming a cradle. Place the seed within and speak the vow, the guardian said. Only the bound one can complete the seal. Yalen stepped forward and knelt. The seed grew warm in his palms. He lowered it into the cradle and placed his hand over it. He closed his eyes and spoke from his heart. I vow to protect life, not just mine, but all that still breathes. I vow to stand between destruction and creation. I vow to carry this burden not as a weapon, but as a promise. The cradle closed, sealing the seed in light. The ground rumbled gently, and a column of green fire shot into the sky. It spread across the clouds, creating a beacon seen from every part of the sanctuary. Liari ran to Yalen as he collapsed to his knees. His skin shimmered faintly, and his eyes glowed for a moment before returning to their human shade. The connection was complete. He was still himself, but something inside had awakened. The guardian approached and knelt beside them. The seed is safe, but you must understand, it will never truly sleep. It will always call to you in times of great need. Yalen nodded slowly. I'll be ready. That night, they rested beneath the open sky. The stars above were unfamiliar, but comforting. Liari lay beside Yalen, her head on his shoulder, both of them silent, both of them breathing in the peace they had created. But peace never lasts forever. Far above, in the shadows of deep space, Dravari leaders watched the beacon flare. The seed had been sealed, but its power was not gone. They would try again. They always tried again. Inside the sanctuary, Yalen trained with the guardians. He learned how to hear the seed's voice, how to sense approaching danger, how to use the energy now flowing through his veins without letting it consume him. Liari guided him through the old ways, through songs sung to the wind and dances that stirred the ground. She was the last of her kind, but with him, she no longer felt alone. One morning, while walking through the silver fields, Liari turned to him and said, "If you stay here, you'll never grow old. The seed slows time. It preserves those who serve it." Yalen stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Then we have time," he said. "Time to make something better." But even as the days passed in quiet strength, a storm was building. Ships from beyond the edge of known space had changed course. Dravari vessels with new marks. They had seen the beacon and believed the seed was still unguarded. One evening, the sanctuary's skies turned dark. The light dimmed. A warning rippled through the trees. The seed called out to Yalen, not with words, but with fear. He rushed to the inner chamber. The pedestal glowed bright. Liari met him there, already armored, her eyes calm but sharp. "They're coming again," she said. "But they don't know what we've become." Yalen picked up the blade gifted to him by the guardian. It wasn't metal. It was shaped from crystal and root, alive in his hand. "Then we remind them," he said. Outside, the sky cracked open as Dravari ships descended. This time, they would not find a dying race or a lone protector. This time, they would face a bonded force born of both Earth and Solari. And this time, Yalen wasn't just defending the seed. He was defending his future. The sky above the sanctuary burned red as the Dravari fleet descended. Their ships cracked the clouds open, sending shockwaves across the golden forests below. But this time, the defenders did not run. Yalen stood at the heart of the sanctuary. His armor glowing faint green, the mark of the seed pulsing at the center of his chest. Liari stood beside him, her eyes calm and her presence like the storm before lightning strikes. The guardians formed a circle around the seed's cradle. The ancient vines of the sanctuary rose like walls, thick and living. The sanctuary itself had awakened to protect its core. The first wave came fast. Dravari drop pods slammed into the ground, releasing soldiers with advanced tech and heavy armor. They moved in silence, confident in their power. Unaware they walked into the rebirth of something greater. Yalen charged first, his crystal blade slicing through the enemy lines. Every swing of his arm left arcs of light in the air. The seed's energy coursed through him, guiding his movements, never overwhelming. Always focused, Liari summoned the power of the land. Vines burst from the earth and wrapped around enemy. Legs. Spikes of crystal shot from the soil, tearing through metal and armor. Her song echoed through the battlefield, deep and ancient. More Dravari poured in, wave after wave, but the sanctuary held. Yalen fought like he had no fear. Every wound healed as quickly as it came. Every blow he landed sent shockwaves through. The ground. The enemy brought down a siege engine, a massive crawler with plasma turrets mounted on its sides. It roared across the battlefield, clearing trees and crystal spires. The ground shook as it approached the seed's chamber. Yalen ran straight at it. The guardians called out, but he didn't stop. He leapt onto the crawler, climbed its side, and drove his blade into its engine core. A burst of light shattered the machine, and fire engulfed the wreckage. He emerged from the flames alive, smoke trailing from his armor, eyes glowing like a star. The Dravari hesitated for the first time. Liari raised her hands, and the seed responded. A dome of green light rose around the sanctuary. Inside it, the wounded were healed. The tired regained strength. The defenders became one with the place. They protected. Yalen and Liari moved as one. He fought with strength, she with grace. Where one struck, the other followed. The Dravari began to retreat, not because they were losing, but because they were afraid. Then the final ship descended. A black vessel larger than anything before. From it emerged the Dravari High Commander, cloaked in shadow, surrounded by a swirling aura of artificial power. He stepped forward and spoke in a cold, grinding voice. "You are nothing. A dying race and a broken man." Yalen stepped forward. "Unshaken, I am more than a man. And she is more than what remains. Together, we are what comes next." The commander charged, his blade drawn. Yalen met him head on. Metal clashed with living crystal. Sparks filled the air. They moved like giants, shaking the ground with every strike. Liari stood at the seed's cradle, singing louder now. The sanctuary pulsed with her voice. Roots lifted from the ground, wrapping around the enemy's feet, slowing them, choking them. Yalen drove his blade into the commander's core. The enemy screamed, the sound tearing the air. The power around him shattered, and his body fell like a stone into the roots below. Silence fell. The last of the Dravari turned and fled, their leader gone, their confidence broken. The skies cleared. As the sanctuary calmed, the war had ended. Yalen dropped to one knee, exhausted but unbroken. Liari came to him and helped him rise. "You are more than what you were," she said softly. "Now you are part of us." The seed glowed once more, not in warning, but in peace. It had been saved, not by armies or empires, but by a single vow and a bond that refused to break. Time passed slowly after that. The sanctuary rebuilt itself. Trees grew taller. Songs returned to the wind. Yalen remained, guarding the seed with Liari beside him. Visitors came from far worlds to learn, not to conquer. The story of the human who stood for the last Solari spread across galaxies, but Yalen never left the sanctuary again. Not because he was bound, but because he had found his purpose. He was the guardian of the seed, and she, the last of her kind, was no longer alone.